Morning all. Starting over here this morning, slightly off topic, just to say that it's finally a nice sunny day here. It's not raining for a change, although it is cold as anything. Middle of winter down here, so that's how it is. Started over here because for the first time in about a decade, Fallout fans like me have finally got some more news about a new game. We knew that 5 was coming eventually, but they officially announced that they're going to remaster New Vegas and 3 this morning, as long as a new update for 76, which isn't the greatest game ever, but I still dive into it here and there. So I want to start over here because I was just really excited to finally have some more news as a Fallout fan. I'm currently 120 hours into my current playthrough of 4, and I've been trying to stretch it out until the end of August for the last DLC's 10th anniversary, but I'm starting to run out of things to do. So I was just really happy as a Fallout gamer to finally have some new news about it. I wanted to share it with everyone who maybe might not have heard it yet. And I thought I'd just show off a couple of the little bobblehead Fallouts that I've got, along with my partner's Linkin Park ones. So slightly off topic, but I just wanted to get that out of my system and on to today's video. So we're back over here today, very, very quickly. As you can see, it's grown again. Literally every time you look away from this thing, it grows. But today we are looking at something above that. Yes, that's right. Today we're looking at things that have wings rather than wheels. Specifically, these two fantastic looking boys here. And I'll try and adjust the camera so you can get a better view of the picture behind. Yes, today we're talking about aeroplanes. Now, I mentioned in a post the other day that long before I was a car person, long before I was even a tank person, I was a plane person. And I don't really know what attracted me to aircraft as a child. I didn't have any pilots in the immediate family. I had a distant relative on my mother's side that I think was in the Fleet Air Arm and was actually stationed on Ark Royal. Not the most recent carrier, the one before that. The sort of one of the last large conventional aircraft carriers that the Royal Navy used prior to the current Prince of Wales or Queen Elizabeth class ones. Aside from that, the only other flight history I've ever been able to track down was I also had a couple of distant relatives in the RAAF, the Royal Australian Air Force, based down in Victoria during World War II. Victoria was actually a very big hotspot for aircraft or RAAF during World War II. A lot of training went on there. The Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation, which built the CA-13 Boomerang, that was based down in Fisherman's Bend or Fisherman's Wharf in Melbourne. I've actually been there, which was really cool. For the Boomerangs, I have done a video on them a few years back if you wanted to check that out in my history. But yes, I was a plane person long before I was anything else. I was really into aircraft. I played a lot of sort of aircraft games back in the day, games like Heroes of the Pacific, Pacific Dogfights. My friend had a PC with Microsoft Combat Flight Sim, so we had a few things there from the European and Pacific theaters. It was a really big influence. I used to build Lego aircraft a lot, watched a lot of air movies like Battle of Britain and things like that. And when I was writing, probably the most successful novel series I had, and the series that I came closest to publishing, was very much focused on World War II aviation. Before I got writer's block, I was in the process of sort of redoing them all and tuning them up to the point that I could get them published, but never really sort of went ahead. As I said, got writer's block a while back and it just never went away. Life got in the way then, and I just haven't had the chance to go back to it all. But the love for aircraft has lived on. I don't know why, because the first time I flew back in 2012, it terrified the shit out of me. And not really the biggest fan of flying in planes. I love them in games, I love building them, I love talking about them, but don't really like sitting in them. I think it's, I don't know what it is, but I love looking at them just from a distance, or if they're on the ground. So today we are talking about, as I said, these two in particular. As you can probably tell from this little shelf, not only am I a big fan of the RAAF, our Indigenous Defence Force, I'm also a massive fan of the F111. For those that don't know, these two guys, the picture at the back and that little at the back there, relate to the American-built General Dynamics F111. It was a multi-role tactical sort of strike aircraft that was developed during the 1960s. I believe it entered service with the US very, very late in the Vietnam conflict, towards the end. Performed reasonably well from what I read. It was essentially a deep strike aircraft capable of about Mark II or above Mark II, essentially designed to penetrate deep into enemy territory, carrying a large bomb load. It could carry nuclear weapons. So it was designed to basically deep interdict, strike, carry out attacks like that. Australia went for the version that could carry anti-ship missiles, which you can see here. Fun fact, at one point during the recruitment process, the RAAF was considering the North American F-15, which would have been pretty cool to see. But what stuck, or what ended up being a sticking point for them, from what I read, was that the F-15 didn't have a naval capability. It didn't have the anti-ship capacity that Australia was looking for at the time. Australia, of course, big island nation, so naturally most enemies that want to start things with us are going to come here by boat. So having fast aircraft like that can take out ships before they get here was a really big sticking point for them, and I think that ultimately had a big say in why they went for the F111. This was the main bomber and strike aircraft for the RAAF for several decades. I was lucky enough to actually grow up seeing these things fly around. Once a year here in Brisbane, we still do have a festival called River Fire. It's a big festival celebrating the city, celebrating the river, and it used to end with one of these things doing a big flyover and doing what they call a dump and burn. You've probably seen photos of it on the internet. It essentially looks like a massive flame shooting out the back of these things. I'll go into them more a little bit later, because I'll show you sort of what the dump and burn actually involves. I just wanted to sort of show off my little shelf here for starters. I eventually, in the next part of the video, I will take these guys down and we'll have a closer look at them so you can get a better understanding. But yes, I have a lot of history with the Australian Defence Force stuff. Really cool sort of planes. I've got everything here from the very first aircraft we used, like your Sopwith Camels, your World War II fighters like the P-40, which I did touch on in my Boomerang video, the CAC-27 Sabres, very similar to the North American F-86 from the Korean War vintage. These were essentially a completely redesigned aircraft though. They replaced the American-built engines with a Rolls-Royce Avon turbojet, and they replaced the 650 cal machine guns with a couple of cannons. I think they are 30 millimeter Aidens. As you can see there, they've also got like drop tanks, rocket pods, bombs, whatnot. So these things were one of our primary fighter aircraft for quite a while there. I'm a sucker for anything indigenously designed, so being a Commonwealth aircraft thing, I just had to pick it up. A North American P-51, which I picked up along with my P-40 when I went to the museum in Moorabbin down in Melbourne a few years ago. So those two have been through the wars, and they've been through a few moves since then. One of my favorites, of course, the consolidated PBY Catalina flying boat, the most successful submarine killer of World War II. Ended up being quite a multi-role aircraft. It was good for anti-submarine, anti-shipping, search and rescue, patrol, and reconnaissance. It was actually a PBY that first spotted the German battleship Bismarck when it left port on its one and only sortie. Catalina's also played a big part in reconnaissance during the Battle of Midway in 1942 as well. So a lot of history with the RAAF as well. As you can see, this one here is painted up as one of the Black Cats. These were a group of, as you can see, all black Catalina flying boats used by the RAAF for nighttime nuisance raids on Japanese islands, Japanese shipping. They'd lay mines, torpedo ships, bomb camps, just be a regular absolute nuisance to the Japanese, keeping them on their toes all hours of the night and the day. Over there we see hiding behind the R8, which is sitting there purely because I have nowhere else to put it at the moment. If we put that there, that is a little glider I actually just picked up last week of the F-18 Hornet. The two-seat Super Hornet version of this, which is the attack variant, was actually what replaced the F-111s. So I thought I'd just do a quick little show off here of the shelf that they live on. And as I said, I have seen these two in person, and I'm going to give you a little slideshow of photos that I've got of these things in real life. And I'm also going to show a couple of photos of what they replaced. Now, during the 50s and the 60s, the main bomber aircraft that we used was the English Electric Canberra, which was a twin-engine bomber. I know. As you can tell by the name, it was designed by the British, used by us. We used it in Vietnam with, I think, only 2 combat losses from memory. But towards the end of Vietnam, we were looking for something to replace the Canberra. The Canberra was a really good 50s, 60s bomber in the interim, but it was starting to show its age in the face of more modern technology. So we were looking for something to replace it. And McDonnell Douglas decided, or sorry, General Dynamics, I should say. I get my plane guys mixed up. General Dynamics had this thing coming along, and the RAAF wanted it. At the time, we couldn't get it. So as an interim, while our F-111s were being prepared, we were actually loaned a couple of McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantoms, which was a shock to me. And when I first found this out, I think it was in 2018, when I went to Moorabbin, or went to the RAAF museum, that was how I actually found out that the RAAF had used F-4 Phantoms I never knew we had. Again, I will have some photos of those momentarily. But the Phantoms were used as a stopgap until we could have the F-111 on full-time sort of deployment. So I just thought I'd just show these little guys off. And I wanted to show these off today because this is the sort of stuff I know a lot more about. I know I ummed and ahed my way through a lot of the car stuff, and I'm probably ahhing my way through a lot of things now because I've only just woken up, so apologies for that. But I'll get these guys off the shelf, and we'll have a quick little look at them a bit more up close. Okay, so here they are on my makeshift workbench. This is actually the desk for my partner's stuff. So if it's a bit messy, I apologize in advance. I also apologize for not dusting these guys off a little bit better. Didn't expect the dust to grow back so quickly. This house is just full of dust. I swear, if we ever dust the place, half the house is just going to collapse on itself. So, so yes. Going back to the Second World War, the RAAF used a mixture of British and American aircraft when it came to sort of strike and bomber types. The Catalina, I mentioned before, we touched on. We also used the B-24, big 4-engine heavy bomber the Americans had. We used those quite a bit in the Pacific. A lot of RAAF squadrons also served in Europe under the Royal Air Force, flying things like Halifaxes, Lancasters, big 4-engined aircraft designed to sort of penetrate deep into enemy territory and, you know, strategic bombing and that sort of thing. Shortly after the Second World War, Australia's bomber fleet was replaced with the Avro Lincoln, which was a improved variant of the Avro Avro Lancaster, which was used quite a lot during the Second World War. And that was used in the Malayan emergency, which was a counterinsurgency operation in Borneo in the 50s. Operated with our CAC Sabres, which I showed you before. And then they were replaced or phased out by the Canberra bombers, which we were just talking about previously. As I said, used those for several years. I've been lucky enough to see quite a few of the Canberras in person. There's a couple on display in a park a couple of hours west of me, near RAAF Amberley, which is an airbase out near the town of Ipswich, or the city of Ipswich. There is one at a museum there, which I haven't seen yet. I keep meaning to go out there, but it is a bit of a drive for where I am. The Canberras, I've also seen quite a few of them at the RAAF Museum at Point Cook, which is in Melbourne. I want to remember this right, East Melbourne, I believe. And then there is another really good air museum at Moorabbin on the west side of Melbourne, down in Victoria. I've been lucky enough to see both of them. Both of those museums are full of great stuff. I'd be happy to do a photo dump of my visits there from 2018 if you want. And I've also seen the one there's a museum up the coast from us near the city of Caloundra, which also has a Canberra, and it has one of these as well, which is really, really cool. So the Canberra was getting a bit long in the tooth towards the end of the Vietnam War, as I mentioned, and the RAAF was looking for something to replace it with. They were originally going to replace it with the BAC, I think it was a TSR-2, which was sort of similar to the F-111 in that it was a big twin-engine swing wing design with a similar mission in mind, to go deep inside enemy territory, deep strike missions, you know, with a multi-role capability. The TSR-2 was a British project, was built, one still exists, but it was very controversially cancelled. Aviation people out there, you could compare its cancellation to what happened with the Avro Arrow in Canada. A very successful aircraft that sort of ticked all the boxes, but politics inevitably got in the way and it was canned. Now, if you're wondering what swing wing refers to, I think the correct technical term is variable geometry. Essentially, well, if we can demonstrate here, it allows the wing to adjust. Now, I'm doing this one-handed, and I really don't want to break these things. So, as you can see here, conventional aircraft have a wing that's fixed. And as you can see by this, variable geometry wings allow the wing to be adjusted. So for lower speeds, such as takeoff, landing, more maneuverability and whatnot, you would have the wings extended, as you see here. For high speed flight, and to get to the aircraft's maximum speed, which on the F-111 is just over Mach 2, I believe, you can swing the wing back. Obviously, you can adjust it to different angles, but essentially it just allows you to move the wings like so. Another aircraft which very famously has this design is, of course, the Grumman F-14 Tomcat. Anyone that's ever seen Top Gun, I should say, not Top Gear. Hammond, you idiot! You've got the wrong bloody show mentioned again. Anyone that's ever seen Top Gun is going to know what an F-14 is. Everyone loves the Tomcat, one of the most iconic aircraft of all time. Has a very similar thing. Several Russian designs had it as well, most notably the Mikoyan Gurevich, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, MiG-23 and MiG-27. Both of those featured swing wings like this. Now, what I was saying earlier about the dump and burn. The dump and burn was essentially a way to emergency dump fuel in the event of an emergency landing or just any sort of in-flight emergency that would involve dumping a heap of fuel. So we go to the back here. There would be a nozzle in the center here between the two afterburners, which would allow you to basically jettison the fuel. So they would jettison the fuel out, hit the afterburner, it would ignite the flame, and it would just cause this big flame trail to come out the back of one of these. I will have to try and find a photo of it and put it on here to show you what it is. When we had Riverfire here back in the day, the finale of the night was always one of these doing a dump and burn at night, which was pretty damn impressive. It would light up my backyard and it would go for about 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, I remember talking about it with my father, the distance that these things can travel in just 5 minutes is just insane. And it was one of the key memories I had growing up, was just watching these things fly around. Australia used these quite a lot longer than the United States, actually. We used them up until 2011, when they were phased out in favour of the FA-18 Super Hornet, which is still buzzing around at the moment, and is currently being replaced by the F-35 Lightning II, which, I don't know, I'm not a really big fan of the Lightning. I don't know if it's just because I like the planes that it's replacing more, or what, but I don't know. The Lightning just doesn't cut it for me. I love the original Lightning, aka the P-38, that twin boom looking thing there, but I'm not a big fan of the newer one. But anyway, today's not about the F-35, it's about these guys. So yeah, I've been really lucky to see these things fly, grow up with them. I've got models of them, and I've been able to see them in person. I've seen one, again, down at Point Cook in Melbourne. And I've also seen one up here at Caloundra in 2015. The museum up at Caloundra got one of these in a paint scheme similar to this. The one at Point Cook, I believe, is the later sort of grey. This is more the Vietnam era, 1970s, 1980s. I think they refer to it as a Southeast Asia camouflage. As you can probably tell, very similar to what the US aircraft in Vietnam were using, hence the name. As I mentioned, when I went to Point Cook, that was how I actually found out that we had used F4 Phantoms for a while as well. As I mentioned previously, when the Australian government decided to go ahead with the contract for the F111s, the Americans didn't actually have F111s ready for us. So in the interim, they offered to loan us a couple of squadrons of the F4 Phantom, another favourite of mine, big twin-engine beast, famous from the Vietnam War, still in service today. That thing has been in service for, I want to say, about 60 odd years, and it's still flying around today with the Air Force of Turkey, and I think the Iranians still have some, provided they haven't been blown to smithereens by this point, which is really sad. As an aviation person, just, yeah, I'm not going to go into the current conflict, but yeah, it just sucks thinking about all those F-14s and F-4s, and just thinking about the amount of shit those airframes have survived to get to this point. It's pretty fucking crazy. Pretty crazy stuff. But yeah, I was surprised to find out that we had used F4s for a while. I had no idea up until that point. So that was a cool little thing to find out when I went down there. I'm going to try and edit in some photos of that visit so you can see what I'm talking about. As I said, I only really operate off an iPhone, and I don't really have any editing software or anything, so I will try and sort of, while I'm talking, place some photos from those visits. The museum up at Caloundra is also where I got my F111 keychain from. If you saw my last video, I mentioned that unfortunately that keychain finally had a wing snap off. So on the plus side, I now have an excuse to go up there soon and do a proper video, show you around, rather than just have a couple of model kits sitting around. I can actually show you what I'm talking about. So these two I picked up from my, well, it used to be my local hobby store before I moved. I picked these two up about 6 years ago. I was very proud of them. As a kid, I grew up in a very humble home, humble background. A lot of the model kits I had were plastic put together things, which some of them were actually hand-me-downs from my Uncle Howard, which I treasured very much so, and I'm very annoyed that I didn't keep them after his passing. They just sort of got lost as I grew up or as I moved and things like that. And a lot of the model kits I had were just stuff that I tried to build myself. I've still got some of the aircraft and tanks that I built in high school still with me over 20 years later, which is pretty damn cool. And I will have to do a little time capsule video on those at some point too, if people want to see that and see how my skills have degraded. But these two, I did not build, as you can probably tell. These two are proper metal functioning, like movable object style ones. Already built, very expensive. And yeah, I just happened to pick some up at the right time. Can't remember if they were having a sale or if if it was just tax time when I bought them, but picked them up, brought them home. I remember my partner sort of raised an eyebrow when I told her. Um, she's not one of those people that jumps up and down when you spend money on things, but jokingly, I came home and she's like, "Oh, what did you get? Did you get another car or something?" And I just remember looking at her and just going, "You're not allowed to be angry." She's like, "What?" I was like, "You can only say nice things." She's like, "What did you do? What did you buy?" And admittedly, she was a bit more sedate than I expected when I showed her this. Keeping in mind, at the time, we were saving up to buy a house or move. So to find out that I had dropped several $100s on these two guys, yeah. But, she's warm to them, which is good. She even doesn't mind getting dragged along to the air museums. I do remember when we went to the two down in Victoria, we actually visited them both within the same week. She was originally going down there because she wanted to meet the guy that played Trevor in Grand Theft Auto 5, Stephen Ogg. And she's like, "Oh, I'm going down there for like 4 days. Do you want to come with me?" And at first I was like, there isn't really that much in Melbourne I want to do. And then I thought about it and I was like, well, hang on. I'm a plane person. I know that there are two air museums down there. I'm also a car person, and I know that Melbourne has the Formula One Grand Prix circuit, which you can actually drive around most of that because most of it's just public road. So I thought, it's a couple of days. Why not? I'll give it a go. So glad I did, because I had a chance to see a lot of aircraft that I probably would never have been able to see otherwise. I got to see a CA-13 Boomerang in person, one of the indigenous built aircraft here in Australia. As I said, I got to visit
awesome.
Fisherman's Wharf, or
Not
Fisherman's
bad.
Bend, where the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation used to be located. Also got to see a Bristol Beaufighter in person, one of my favourite aircraft. Big twin-engine attack aircraft, multi-role from World War II. They also had a couple of Mirage fighter jets, which were French-built
Bacon.
sort of delta wing aircraft that we used as fighter aircraft alongside the F-111 for quite some time. One of my earliest childhood memories, and I can never remember the name of the damn film, um, actually featured the F-111 and the Mirage, and it was one of those dystopian battle royale style films that sort of really got popular in the 80s and 90s. It was one of those things where it's like a futuristic society and they have like a group of prisoners in like a compound or an island and they're being hunted for sport by a group of people. It was an Australian film and I can never remember its name, but I think the government's failsafe if the prisoners rebelled was to bomb it. And of course, as most of those films go, the prisoners revolted, overpowered the guards. They started blowing up the compound, and the government called in like a failsafe thing. And I distinctly remember there being quite a bit of footage, like actual real footage that they'd used of F-111s and Mirages, like loading up bombs, taxiing, taking off, actually flying, making it look as if they were flying to the compound to like level this place out. I can't remember for the life of me remember the name of the film, but it was just one of those weird, low budget Australian flicks. But I remembered seeing the F-111 and the Mirage and that, and I thought that was really cool because like I got to see that F-111 flying around. Um, these got added into War Thunder a while back, and I suck at flying. I absolutely suck at flying in that game. Put me in Ace Combat and I'm fine. Put me in any of those older sort of console dogfighting arcadey games that I told you about, like Heroes of the Pacific, and I'll ace it. I'll win the whole war myself. Put me in War Thunder, yeah, no. It doesn't really work. I am very much prefer to be on the ground. very much prefer to be on the ground. So you can consider that little shelf I showed you before as a memorial to my shitty ass flying skills in that game. So I've had a couple of my friends ask me, oh, you say that you're a gamer, why don't you post game footage on your channel? And I was like, don't really have a way to record it. And the thing with War Thunder is you kind of have to play a few hours to get maybe 15 minutes of good quality content, because there's a lot of games you do really good, and then there's a lot of games you do really shit. So it's real hit and miss. But yes, I wanted to show these guys off today. You might be wondering why I titled the video what I did. And it's not just because I'm a blatant Black Sabbath fan and I love all that old British metal and things like that. It's actually because the F-111 in American service was known as the Aardvark on account of the long-ass nose that these things have. Now, when the RAAF got their hands on them, they started referring to it in a similar fashion, but we called them bush pigs. Again, because of the big-ass nose and the big-ass snout. We don't have aardvarks in Australia, so we went for something a bit local. So yeah, we went with bush pig, or just shortened to pig, the pig. And that's sort of what I knew them as. So that's sort of where the title for the video came from. It wasn't just a blatant attention-seeking thing. People will be thinking, oh, this is a Black Sabbath tribute. No, surprise, fighter jets instead. But yeah, I wanted to do a little video about these guys. I'm very proud that I've been able to keep these things in such good condition. They've been through quite a bit, and they've been through quite a few moves over the years. And I'm very proud that I now actually have a shelf that I'm able to put them on and display. And I suppose in a way, these things were a big part of my childhood. As I said, I actually got to grow up seeing these things in service still. I remember them being such a massive deterrent to a lot of neighboring countries in Southeast Asia. There was an anecdotal story that I remember from many, 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 many years ago, and I don't know if it was true. As I said, it was an anecdotal one that I remember reading somewhere. But the story went that I think it was the Indonesian government was having a meeting or something talking about Australia and the deterrent we had with our strike aircraft and things like that. And this was back in the day before Indonesia had the more modern military equipment it has now, like the Russian Su-30 and Su-27 and things like that. So according to the story I'd read, the ministers were discussing, why Australia was such a threat, why they should take what we say seriously and things like that. And apparently one of them said something similar to, he basically got up, went to the window, or one of the windows in the office, opened the window, and basically told the ministers there at the meeting, they have a plane that could fly over here and drop a bomb through this very window onto us right now, and there isn't a thing that we could do about it. Which I thought was kind of funny. Which at the time was true. As I said, these things were designed for low, high-speed interdiction missions. They were basically designed to fly very low, very fast, deep into enemy territory, drop whatever payload they had, and then skedaddle before anything had a chance to go. And whether it was a large conventional bomb load or guided munitions, anti-ship missiles, air-to-ground missiles, anything like that. And they were used in Vietnam, I think, as a conventional bomber. And then during the Gulf War, they were used more in the very first Gulf War, I should say. It's kind of sad that we've had that many Gulf Wars. I have to clarify which one I'm talking about. In the first Gulf War in 1991, they were used quite effectively as a strike aircraft for high-speed interdiction style sort of stuff. There was also, the Americans used an electronic warfare variant called the EF-111 Raven, which wasn't armed with any weapons, didn't carry bombs, didn't carry rockets or anything like that. It was packed with electronic equipment, and it was essentially designed to assist strike aircraft in locating and attacking targets of their own. It was a support aircraft, nothing more. And one of the most famous air-to-air stories from the first Gulf War is that one of those technically scored an air-to-air kill against an Iraqi Air Force Mirage because they were at low level, they got engaged by a Mirage, and during some high-speed maneuvering to try and shake this thing off them, the Mirage either lost control or it clipped something and it crashed, and they technically got awarded a maneuver kill for it. So that was kind of cool. Imagine flying an aircraft that cool that you can blow up, you can destroy an aircraft and you don't even have to touch it. You don't even have to shoot it. It's like the old Chuck Norris joke where, Chuck Norris could blow up a plane by pointing at it and saying bang, that sort of thing. But yeah, as I said, I was very grateful that I got to grow up watching these things rather than just seeing them in museums. I've actually seen them fly. As I said, I've seen the dump and burn at night, and they also used to do it during the day. Down on the Gold Coast, they used to have an IndyCar race in conjunction with the touring cars that we have here many, many years back. And they used to have one of these do a big flyover with the dump and burn. And I remember that as well. I remember seeing that in person, which was just badass. What you don't realize here is the sheer size of these things. As I said, I've been able to get up close with one of these things up at the Air Museum at Caloundra. And, I mean, just to give you an idea, if we cycle into the cockpit, that's your little pilot in there. So it sort of gives you an idea of just how massive these things are. I remember the shed the one in Calandra's in is I wouldn't say it's a small shed, but it feels small when you have one of these parked in it. Like, it's huge. And I remember walking around to the back and looking through the afterburners there, the exhaust. You can literally crawl into these. In real life, they are that big. You can crawl into them if you really wanted to. Don't actually try and do that. The museum will throw you out. See, I don't know. I'm old school. I love these old camo schemes. I love the Southeast Asia camo schemes. One of my favorite ones, and I've tried to replicate it on so many different aircraft. I've got an F4 buried in the shed that has a similar paint scheme to this. I've got a C-47 that I converted into a Vietnam era gunship, and that's got a similar paint scheme. See, the newer ones, these guys are cool, but I don't know. The child in me is like, they look kind of boring because they're just grey. And I know why it is. I know that modern aircraft are more like that, but I've always got a soft spot for camo schemes. I love camo schemes in anything, which you'll probably see when I show off some of my model kits in later videos. So yeah, these little guys, these little war pigs are my part of my childhood. Got to see them fly, got to see them up close. I was very sad when they got retired, although I can understand why. By that point, they were quite an old airframe, and the F-111s had already had issues with corrosion. I think the wing spars in particular, like part of the swing wings and that, were very prone to wearing out and getting corroded. And I think that was a big part of why they were retired. I understand why, because they were becoming unsafe to fly, but it still sucks. And what sucks even more is I distinctly remember when they did discontinue them. Rather than, like, a few got donated to museums, as I said, and as I'll show you. A few, I think, got cut up and made into souvenirs, similar to what you see at the moment with the little keychains with pieces of made out of pieces of Russian tanks that have been blown up and things like that. But a lot of them, much to my annoyance, basically had their wings cut off and their fuselages were just bulldozed into this giant pit somewhere out near Ipswich, and they just buried them in landfill, which just sucked. Like, I don't know, you might sit there and argue, what's the more logical thing to do, but as an enthusiast, as an aviation person, that just sucked to see such a great plane just meet such a horrible end like that. But, at least we still get to see them today. And as I said, in a couple of months when things line up, if I can get time from work, I will actually go to Caloundra and I'll do a proper video for you guys so I can show you in person a lot of the aircraft that I've been talking about. In the meantime, I hope you got something out of this. Hope you get a little history lesson out of it. I hope I sound a bit more confident with this sort of thing. I really thought I would. Um, as I said, military stuff is much more my thing. I like cars, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to the knowledge side of it, military stuff is really where I'm at. And it's the sort of stuff I love to talk about the most. So, as I said, I've got ships, I've got tanks, I've got some of my granddad's World War II ships that I'd love to show off. I've got a lot of tanks that I'd love to show off. You know, there's a lot of stuff there to sort of unpack and talk about. So, let me know what you think. The last video really didn't get a lot of views. I guess the bots got sick of watching and decided to move on to something else. But let me know what you think of this. If there's anything you want to see in particular, if you want me to talk about any of the aircraft I've shown further, do a bit more history on them, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, as always, thanks for sticking around. I appreciate every view and every comment I get. I just do this as an outlet for a bit of fun, for a hobby. So any encouragement, big or small, is such a big deal, which is really, really cool. So if you're still here, thanks for sticking around, and I will see you in the next video.